Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar review, and this is going to be a merchandise review. And yeah, the funny story about this one is that I ordered this thing and I was expecting this to be a fairly positive review, you know, show you the really high points of this Toyline, but turns out there was a bit of a mistake with the order and the product wasn't exactly what it was meant to be, and so I ended up with a different thing than I actually ordered. And thus this review is going to be more of a this is why this Toyline failed type review, as opposed to this was the highlights of this Toyline. So what I'm going to be reviewing today is the Avatar The Last Airbender action figure line, Water Nation Aang. Now what I actually ordered was, well, at least what the listing was on Amazon, was Water Vortex Aang, which is this Aang in normal, you know, airbender attire, just with this water effect part that makes Aang look like he's doing the water kind of vortex kind of spout thing where he kind of swirls up into the air. Best known probably episode 2 when he goes into the Avatar state and does it. I'm pretty sure that's what the move is, what the figure is based on. And so I got that because, one, that Aang base figure is actually a really good representation of the Toyline in terms of, you know, like, I think it has max articulation and stuff like that. But unfortunately there's a bit of a mix-up. Turns out whatever way Amazon lists these old action figures, there's a complete mess up with the barcode, and Water Vortex Aang is listed as Water Nation Aang, and all the pictures are wrong. And so yeah, I'm going to be reviewing this one today instead of that other one. So, yeah, let me just get behind the camera now and we'll open this up and go through this figure. Obviously, I've only done one previous, or two maybe, previous action figure reviews. That was for the Roku action figure, and you can go back and check out that one to see how I thought of it. But for now I'll get behind the camera and open this up. Okay, so anyway, here we go. Here is the figure itself. It's obviously in packaging, unopened. And yeah, this is from the Air series, which I believe is the first series that they brought out. I think they went Air, Water, then Fire. Fire series obviously was only released in places like Portugal, Brazil and stuff like that, so many fans don't even know that those figures exist and stuff like that. And anyway, so yeah, this is from the first wave. As you can see here, it's Water Nation Aang from the Air series. Includes whip, ice, lance, shield and pouch, which he certainly does. And really the big thing when you look at this figure, just in terms of the accessories it comes with, the general like Water Nation character attire, you can almost get the sense like this figure was meant to be Katara. It comes with a water whip. Like, you really get the sense that that's what it was. It's a wave 1 figure. Aang's in the first wave, Zuko's in the first wave, Sokka's in the first wave. The only real main character missing is Katara, and here's Aang with basically everything you'd want Katara to come with, the water pouch and some water effect parts. And it's really obvious that that's the case. But anyway, let's turn it around. Back of the packaging again, Water Nation Aang. Here's a little bio, really basic, just gives the intro to the first episode. Some of the stuff that you get. There's some of the more deluxe figures, battle benders. It's just, I think those are just standard figures, but they come with light up effect parts. Maybe I'll be able to get one of those soon-ish and do a more positive review. But anyway, here's the first wave of figures, and this gives you an idea of like a reasonably okay like start to the line. Zuko, really cool. Normal Aang, which I think is the one I was going to get before this mix-up. Fire Nation Soldier, but like, okay, soldier character, buy loads of them, that makes sense. Sokka, Spirit Aang, you're getting like, oh, repaints already. Roku, for some reason, like, weird figure to do in your first wave, you know, just have Roku, like a character who appears in like one episode in the first season. And then this figure here, Water Nation Aang. And obviously this Water Nation Aang is the weirdest figure in the line. Like, take him out and you get the sense like, okay, all of this stuff does happen in the show. It may not be the kind of most obvious stuff from the show in terms of, you know, like characters you're missing is obviously like Zhao, you're missing Katara, first and foremost, and stuff like that, Iroh and stuff. and then you just have like Aang. I'll talk more later about what really went wrong with this toy line in terms of the later waves, because this opening wave, you're like, okay, no female characters, that's fine. You're really only missing Katara. But what really went wrong? But let's open this. Anyway, feels weird opening this figure. It came out in 2006, this first wave, so they did release the merchandise and go heavy on the merchandise very early on in this Avatar The Last Airbender toy line. Like they went really heavy. Like there are Avatar The Last Airbender like plasters out there. Their stickers, they went super heavy on the merchandise stuff. Like there was a lot of video games that came out very early on. They went heavy on like the toy line. Like it's not just these action figures here that you can see. There's a smaller kind of mini kind of action figure line that they had where they're more like figurines, and they have these massive huge figures of like Aang and Zuko that have lots of lights and sounds, plus some other stuff. But the main focus in the toy line was these 6-inch figures here, this line, and then there was also the kind of animal / vehicle line, which included stuff like this the spirit version of Fang. There is the Fire Nation Komodo Rhino, which I also have, just not to hand right now. But yeah, anyway, let's get into Aang. There's most of the packaging out of the way, and let's take this stuff out. So here we go. Ice shield here. Pretty cool, like piece of just transparent plastic. You know, it's got a handle on it. Doesn't really like fit in terms of like it being made out of ice. It seems super, you know, symmetrical and not very like ice-like, very specific. We've got this kind of ice spear dagger thing that just attaches onto the character's hand. That's interesting. I suppose that's fairly relevant right now, because Tonrock basically used a kind of ice spike like this in the last episode of Korra, which is interesting. Okay, bit of tape here, and yeah, we've got this water pouch, which is actually a pretty cool thing that they actually gave the character. You know, just they actually like, they have all these effect parts, but they also give you the water pouch where the characters keep the water, and it's got a nice bit of cloth here, obviously, to go over the shoulder and stuff like that. So that's pretty nice, and this really kind of gives you a hint, like, yeah, this is kind of Katara's item in the show. But yeah, let's take this. Here's the water whip. It's again, like, given that like this line is very heavy on like effect parts in terms of the way they represent bending, this is okay. Like, it's pretty cool. It's just a transparent piece of water to represent water whip. Maybe it could have been shaped a little bit better to make it more like real water whip, but still reasonably cool. And then the figure himself. Okay, got a twist tie at the back. I do like that there's not much packaging on these guys. Like, it's just like one twist tie to get them out. That's fine. Toys in more recent years have gone back to a much easier to get out of the packaging, but a couple of years ago they were really dreadful to get out. Get this plastic out of the way, and yeah, here is Water Nation Aang. Yes, I did just say those words together. And yeah, at least in the first wave, the one thing that never happened in the show, Aang never wore clothes like this, because as was revealed in this book of Korra, airbenders don't need heavy clothes to survive in the cold, because they have that kind of airbending thing where they meditate and know get their breathing properly. With airbending, they can actually warm themselves up, and so they don't need this sort of thing. So makes no sense. Aang never had this in the show. He didn't need it in the show. But how is this just straight up as a figure? Overall, it looks like fairly cool in terms of just, you know, like an action figure. The head sculpt is actually really nice. Like, that's one thing you can say about this line, that they do head sculpt really well. Like, that arrow is perfectly kind of colored to fit in with the airbending tattoos. The eyes are very well painted. Like, for trying to get the action figures to match the show style, this is actually very nice in terms of, you know, like, the eyes are very clearly detailed here. He has a kind of You can just about make it out there, but just a kind of blank grin on his face, like a smile on his face. Like, it's not really an expression, it's just like a line across. Nose, you can sort of see. Ears are kind of like Aang's fairly big ears that he has in this show. And then the clothing obviously is the problem, like he never wore this sort of stuff. I think the shoes overall work for Aang, and that basically he had those kind of boots that he was wearing. I assume they're just kind of like underneath this corner, more baggy pants here, but yeah. Then on the hands you can also see that he has the ends of the arrows coming out here. Same on the other hand, and yeah, overall it's pretty cool. This poncho, it's made out of kind of rubbery plastic. You can move it around a bit. Don't know if you could. Don't know. You probably can't. You can't take it off. It's kind of molded in here. This white bit of fur here is molded on pretty heavily, but you can sort of see that they do put in some of the details underneath here, just to kind of show the pants and stuff like that. But yeah, it's overall fairly nice. There's the back. Yeah, not much really to say, because it's a costume that he never wore in the show. It's kind of like hard to really say much about it. But in terms of it being, like Water Tribe clothing that we've seen other characters wear, like arguably this is probably like something like the trading card game character Kinto would wear. It fits, the two colors of like navy and blue are definitely like the things that they wear in the show. And it's weird to see Aang in them, honestly. Like, it just, as a concept, Aang in this clothing makes this look like a knockoff or something like that. Like someone just saw this show and thought, boy with arrow, mainly blue clothing in the early episodes, let's put them together in that. Almost like if you could take this head off, that this was meant to be a different character, not Aang. But as it is actually Aang, and they do continue the arrow all the way down the back, as it's meant to, so that's pretty cool. Now, articulation. The head can go side to side, not all the way around because of the way the clothing is done at the back, but pretty good amount. Shoulders go up and down and all the way around, have that kind of a ball hinge kind of motion. So that's pretty good. The shoulders are actually really quite good here. Because of the clothing, the elbow is a little bit like odd, just because like the sleeves come down a lot and it's hard plastic, and so the elbows can only bend like just under 90 degrees. But it's fine. Like you can do most of the main stuff you want to do. It's one of those things like you wish there was a wrist here as well, just to get more kind of a accurate articulation. But for what it is, it's fine. There is a waist swivel? Yep, there is. That's pretty cool. There is a waist. That's pretty cool. Because this is rubber, it also kind of moves around the clothing, which works. That's pretty nice. Then you have basically the same sort of hip articulation as the shoulders. You can move it around, in and out. More or less what you need. Knee has a nice roughly 90-degree bend. That's pretty cool. Ankle articulation is small, but there's some there. Probably like useless articulation, probably doesn't do anything. But oddly, there's more on this side than there is on this side, which is really weird. His left ankle has more range than his right one, which is something that's definitely odd with this toy line, and that I think I noted something like that about Roku. Let me just bring him in here actually, as a comparison. Let me just attempt to stand these guys up. Roku's really difficult to stand just because he's got so much kind of robes compared to his legs. Aang's a little bit easier to stand, but yeah, as you can see, there are our two characters next to each other. In terms of height, it roughly kind of works out. Roku's probably a little bit small compared to Aang, but you can definitely tell that Roku's a bit taller for being an older character. And yeah, it's just weird. Like the thing is, like what really highlights here is that because the characters are so different, like you have a much older character in Roku who has all this kind of formal clothing, they really lower the amount of articulation on Roku. So Roku doesn't actually have elbows. As I complained about, he has these kind of robe talon things that are just super, like that. It's not hard plastic, but it's hard to bend. Like it's just a big chunk of rubber hanging off to make the kind of drooping robes. Instead, he just has this kind of high wrist swivel here. Same like shoulders, and feet articulation as Aang, but you can sort of see that the clothing really determines for these characters what articulation they have. So Roku, obviously with his beard, basically doesn't have a neck swivel, head swivel, but he does have the waist swivel. So that means that Aang has 2 more points of articulation than Roku, who has the elbow and the neck, which is a bit weird. And then if I'd got the proper Aang that I actually ordered, he'd have even more articulation. I think the elbow would have a little bit more. I think the main one has a wrist swivel, and there's even an ab crunch actually on the normal Aang, because he doesn't have to deal with having this weird kind of poncho thing that this Aang has. But yeah, it's just a really kind of odd, like the legs on this Aang are a little bit off as well. Just, you can sort of see there, like both knees are back in their neutral position, but just standing you can see that this knee is below this one, and as I said, the articulation here is less than here, so it makes it even more difficult to stand up. But other than that, as I said, the head sculpts on these figures are actually really cool. Like that's the one positive you can say for this Mattel toy line, that they more or less didn't get a head sculpt wrong too badly with these characters, especially on like these this main toy line. That they are really good. That is Roku, that is Aang, and the general kind of clothing / body sculpts are good. Lack of articulation and just general, what they actually released, some of their planning behind the line was really ultimately what failed for them. But let's quickly bring in the accessories here. Here's the water poncho. Let's try and put this on. So yeah, that's pretty cool. It fits on fairly nicely. Just there. I think that's how they have it, usually hanging down by the side, and then they can do their bending by like bringing it up right from here. So that's a nice accessory. It fits on them nicely. Then you've got our wonderful ice shield here. So let's give Aang his ice shield. Let's also put his ice dagger on his hand, because he's completely a water tribe soldier now, and definitely wouldn't use his other bending. Only water tribe in the here. And then obviously you saw the water whip in packaging. You just have him hold on to it, and it's looks okay. This is kind of like odd. Like, it's definitely weird, some of the bending effect parts that they do. You really do get the sense that Mattel weren't heavily involved with Mike and Brian in terms of asking them, what exactly are these characters going to be doing with this bending and stuff like that. And so they kind of just went to themselves, okay, if a character can manipulate water, they're going to make tools for themselves instead of just like use the water and hit people with that, kind of like this water whip thing. No, they're going to make tools out of it. They're going to make super intricate ice shields and ice swords out of them. But for what they are, they're fine, to add a little bit of extra play value, give the characters a shield, give them this ice spike so they can go stabbing people. Look, Aang just killed his past life, which he kind of did in the comics, the promise. He obviously separated from Roku, but not in that sort of a violent way. But still, it's cool, I have 2 avatars here, even though one's in a costume that never appeared in the show, which is the huge problem with this toy line going forward. You go into Wave 2, and you've got a different Aang in a different Water Tribe clothing. It's like Ice Attack Aang or something like that. You can see a picture of that here. With Zuko, they brought out the Blue Spirit as an action figure. They've got Jet as an action figure, Boomy, They brought out, I think, a second or third Aang in Airbender clothing. They brought out a different Spirit World Aang made from clear plastic instead of just kind of coloured to be like all blue like the Spirit World. They brought out a clear Roku. They got Zuko in his costume that he uses to infiltrate the Northern Water Tribe, that kind of stealth, Arctic stealth clothing. In Wave 3, there was an Agni Kai Zuko, there was an Agni Kai Ozai, they brought out Zhao, and just, it's just, they just got pretty crazy with the repaints in these characters. Like, they weren't afraid to go into the more kind of obscure characters, like Jet got a figure, Boomy got a figure. But at the end of the day, the only reason they did that was because they weren't planning initially on doing female characters. So we weren't going to get a Katara, we weren't going to get a Toph, Azula, so on. Instead, we had to just suffer with Roku getting multiple repaints, Aang getting like 25 different figures or something like that. If you really want to know why this toy line completely failed in the end, it wasn't that like they were just never planning on doing female figures. That was planned. It was planned for the wave after Fire series. They actually were planning at the very least to release a Katara. So there was at least one female figure coming from this line. It just happened way too late, combined with all of the overusing of like Aang's mold and Zuko's mold especially. Have a look at this new type of line that they were actually, I think actually got released. It's called like Animal Armor or something like that. Have a look at the Aang from that line. You can see a picture here. So you can see Aang in dragon armor for reasons. Like, I really don't know what on earth they were planning on doing with that. It was really weird. Just like what they were planning on doing. Just, you can sort of see the problem straight away. Like, it happens in nearly every toy line that there are repaints, but you can do repaints in an interesting way with certain things. Like with Transformers, it works because it's not a human that's so specific to that design. Like, you change the colors and the character does look a little bit different. But with Aang, you change the outfit, and like there's only so many outfits that he actually had. Like, even going into the book, into the Fire Wave, like they didn't give Aang any of his other real costumes that he used in the show as such. Like they never released his book 3 outfit or anything like that. Like, you can really see the problem with this line that developed, in that fans wanted the female characters. They, in general, with a toy line, what do you want? You want to get the characters from the show. And when you're flat out for the first few waves, refuse to give people like one of the main characters, the character that we see for the first time on screen, Katara. If you're not going to give us that character, that's a problem with your toy line, that you are unwilling to do that. And then when you wait until effectively, the 4th wave was going to come out, I assume, as book 3 was coming out, you've waited too long at that stage, because around that stage was when they'd released more or less all of the merchandise that they were planning to release. Like, that was around the time, the book 3 Fire games and stuff like that were coming out. And the problem was that because there was a lack of female figures in the early lines, it means it didn't sell as well going into like wave 1 and 2, because, as I said, Aang, Zuko were getting all the repaints. Even like minor characters who weren't appearing in the show that much were getting repaints, like Roku. And people weren't getting their main characters. So like, what's the incentive to collect the toy line if you're not going to give people the main characters from the show? And so that led to the toy line not doing as well as it should have, and them cancelling Wave 3 for America. Like, that stuff, like I just showed you there with the Dragon Armor Aang, the wave that had Ozai in it, the wave that had Agni Kai Zuko in it, that never came out in America. That only came out in countries like Brazil, Portugal, and a few other European countries. I don't think it got like a UK release at all. So huge problems near the end of this toy line. But overall, from the two figures that I've reviewed, there is potential in this line. What this shows is that Avatar can work as a toy line. If you give the characters detailed enough sculpts to reenact that animation style in plastic, the Avatar Korra style can work in plastic. You can get a good representation of fairly complex designs in plastic. Like just look at this Roku. Sure, he's not the most articulated character, but you're not really going to do that much with this kind of Roku. All you kind of really want to do with this Roku is, bring in Fang, have him pose like in front of Fang, or kind of just about get some sort of a pose with him, on Fang, or something like that, and just represent kind of a scene from the show. And then like even stuff like this, they kind of got wrong, because this is the single release Roku, this is the single release Fang, and then when they did a double pack, what did they do? They did Roku in clear spirit form with a colored version of Fang, so in his kind of red orangey colors that he actually appears in the show. And so they mixed it up. Instead of releasing probably separate normal colored Roku, separate normal colored Fang, and then maybe have the 2-pack be the more special kind of spirit world versions of the two of them, they kind of messed it around, basically, and you can see the problems. And then even then, just with this Fang, like, there's not really too good of a way to like have the character sit on top of them. There's just about Aang sitting on him, but Aang only works because he doesn't have this kind of robe piece, and like even if you want to put Roku on it, like this doesn't compress up like normal fabric. Like you have to basically like have this stuff like flailing all over the place to try and fit Roku on in that same way. And you can sort of see how weird and thin his legs are here as well. You sort of see the problem here trying to get the character on. And he's just fallen over. But yeah, there are the problems with this toy line. But coming back to the figure I'm reviewing here, this Aang, there's potential. The base style of figure that they do here has good articulation, looks show accurate, but they ruined it by their choice of repaints and choice of characters that they wouldn't do. But shows potential if, say, Korra eventually gets an action figure line, that the things can work. They can represent these characters very well in plastic, and if they do it well enough for Korra, just the fact that the main character is a girl, I think it's going to work. Like you with Korra, like there's a perfect setup for a toy line straight away, and that is, like wave 1 is pretty obvious. Do Team Avatar. You have Korra, Asami, Mako, Bolin, and maybe if you're doing a 5-figure first wave, include Tenzin in that or something like that. And then you have just a nice mix of, there's 2 female characters in the first wave. If you're doing like a wave 2, you can do Jinora, Amon, maybe at this point you like put Lin in there and start to bring in some of the book 2 characters, like maybe not Eska Desna, but like Unalak, maybe do it like a Rava figure or something like that, Avatar 1. Like there's a lot of characters you can do, and now with book 3, I think people would love a figure of, Zahir, Pali, Minghua, Ghazan. There's so much potential to do characters like these for Korra, but I don't know if that's going to happen at this stage. The Dark Horse Deluxe line hasn't fully been confirmed yet if it's going to get an action figure line or what they're going to be doing. Seems like it's going to be more like select statues and then figurines where like they won't be posable like this, but we still have to wait and see what exactly they're doing. But yeah, for now that's been my review of this figure. Overall, you know, it's kind of like, I think it's a good figure overall, but I can't get past the fact that this character, Aang, never wore this costume in the show. Ever. Never wore this. And then it was revealed in core that he would never have a need to wear this either. So, you know, it's kind of one of those things where you've made a character kind of pointless in a wave. Like, you really have no reason to buy this. And there's a reason that this figure is probably, out of nearly every figure in that toy line, the cheapest one to buy out there. Like, you can usually, most of the other figures go for a lot of money for, like, I managed to get a good price on this Roku, but say, like, this Fang here in the background, not even, like, that amazing of a figure, because the articulation's really bad, probably goes for, like, £100, dollars, wherever you want, when you find him. Most of the other action figures go for at least $40, online, if not over 100 for some of the other figures. But this Water Nation Aang, pretty much everywhere goes for, you know, 10, 20, 15, something like that. Very few places I see have this figure for a large amount of money. But yeah, that's been the review. I've already gone too long. Maybe I'll be back in a couple of weeks, months, with another figure. Hopefully the correct one I ordered this time. But yeah, that's been the review. Thanks for watching, and bye. Bye.